The rain came down like sheets of sorrow, heavy and unrelenting, soaking everything in its path as thunder rolled over the small town like an echo of grief. Inside a dimly lit auto repair garage tucked away at the end of a quiet street, a man worked with grease-stained hands and a hollow heart. His name was Marco, a once happy soul who now carried pain in his eyes like storm clouds that never cleared. He wiped his brow with the back of his arm, even though the sweat no longer bothered him. Physical discomfort was a distant ache compared to the gaping hole in his chest, the one left behind when his wife, Isabella, passed away exactly 1 year ago that day. The garage was silent except for the rhythmic clinks of tools and the sound of rain hammering against the tin roof like a funeral drum. Then suddenly, the bell above the garage door jingled wildly, accompanied by a frantic knock on the glass. Marco turned around sharply, startled, his wrench slipping from his fingers and clattering to the floor. What he saw made his heart stop. A woman, drenched, shaking, dressed in what was once a beautiful white wedding gown, stood outside the glass door, her mascara running down her cheeks, her eyes wide with fear and desperation. Mud streaked the delicate fabric, her hair hung wet and tangled around her shoulders, and she looked like she'd run through a storm straight out of a tragedy. She raised one trembling hand and mouthed the words, "Poor favor, Ayudim, please, help me." Before we go deeper into this emotional and life-changing encounter, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of the human heart, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who might need it today, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Corner. Your support helps us bring these real, heartfelt stories to life. Marco rushed to the door, unlocking it without thinking. The woman stumbled in, cold rain following behind her like a ghost. Her entire body trembled, not just from the cold but from something more, something unseen but deeply felt. Marco, without a word, pulled an old wool blanket from a chair in the corner and wrapped it around her shoulders. The moment he looked into her eyes, he saw something familiar. Not her face, not her story, he didn't know either, but something deeper. A kind of pain. A silent scream. A soul on the edge. Her name, she said through chattering teeth, was Clara. She had just run away from her own wedding. Marco didn't ask questions. He wasn't the kind of man to pry into the suffering of others. After losing Isabella, he understood that some stories were too raw to voice right away. He simply made her a warm cup of instant coffee and turned on the small heater he kept near his workstation. The garage filled with the scent of oil, coffee, and a strange sense of fragile peace. Clara sat quietly, her fingers wrapped around the mug as she stared at the floor. Marco returned to his workbench, giving her space, unsure what to say to a runaway bride on a night like this. He didn't need answers. Not yet. What mattered was that she was safe, for now. And maybe, just maybe, his garage, usually filled with broken machines and silent grief, could offer her the same kind of refuge it had given him for the past year. As the minutes turned into hours, Clara began to speak. In pieces, like a cracked mirror slowly revealing its reflection. She had been forced into the wedding by family pressure, her heart never belonging to the man she was meant to marry. It wasn't love, it was obligation, tradition, and fear. The moment the ceremony began, she panicked. She couldn't breathe. She looked at the crowd, at the man waiting at the altar, and saw nothing but a life she never chose. So she ran. With nowhere to go, soaked in rain and uncertainty, she saw the dim light in Marco's garage and followed it, desperately hoping it meant something safe. And it did. For the next few days, Clara stayed in the small apartment above the garage that Marco hadn't used since Isabella died. He gave it to her without hesitation, telling her only that he once believed love was a permanent thing. That it lived forever. Until it didn't. Until one moment, a single tragic instant, left him standing alone with half a heart and a broken future. Each night, Clara would come down to the garage, and they'd share quiet meals and stories neither of them had told in years. She told him about her dreams, the ones she buried under family expectations. Marco told her about Isabella, how she used to bring him lunch every afternoon and laugh at his greasy face. How she smelled like vanilla and always made their tiny home feel like a palace. One evening, as Clara helped Marco organize the dusty shelves of spare parts, she found a picture frame turned upside down. Curious, she flipped it over and saw Marco and Isabella on their wedding day. The image was old, the colors faded, but the love in their smiles was unmistakable. Clara looked at him, and he nodded. "That was the last time I felt whole," he said softly. Clara didn't respond with words. She just sat beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder, offering something that neither of them had felt in a long time, presence. The days turned into weeks. The garage, once a place of sorrow and routine, now pulsed with life again. Clara began helping with customer service, answering calls, even learning a bit about cars. Marco found himself smiling more, his hands working with a new kind of energy. He never expected her to stay. He never asked. But the silence between them began to change, not empty, but full of unspoken healing. Then, one rainy morning, just like the day Clara arrived, a black car pulled up outside the garage. A well-dressed man stepped out, his expression dark and determined. Clara froze when she saw him. It was her ex-fiancé. He had tracked her down. What followed was a tense, quiet conversation at the edge of the lot. Marco stayed inside, watching through the garage window, every muscle in his body tight with worry. Clara came back inside 10 minutes later, her face pale but calm. "I told him I'm not coming back," she said simply. "I choose my own life now." Marco nodded, proud but silent. He knew what that kind of courage cost. The rain came down like sheets of sorrow, heavy and unrelenting, soaking everything in its path as thunder rolled over the small town like an echo of grief. Inside a dimly lit auto repair garage tucked away at the end of a quiet street, a man worked with grease-stained hands and a hollow heart. His name was Marco, a once happy soul who now carried pain in his eyes like storm clouds that never cleared. He wiped his brow with the back of his arm, even though the sweat no longer bothered him. Physical discomfort was a distant ache compared to the gaping hole in his chest, the one left behind when his wife, Isabella, passed away exactly 1 year ago that day. The garage was silent except for the rhythmic clinks of tools and the sound of rain hammering against the tin roof like a funeral drum. Then suddenly, the bell above the garage door jingled wildly, accompanied by a frantic knock on the glass. Marco turned around sharply, startled, his wrench slipping from his fingers and clattering to the floor. What he saw made his heart stop. A woman, drenched, shaken,